Toronto is a big modern city full of big modern things. And then there's this. Behind me is Old Finch Avenue. It's one of a number of streets in Toronto called Old something or other. I mentioned a few of them in my video on Dundas Street. There's a magic link up here, and I'll put a link down in the description so you can find it when you finish watching this video. Now, the video is about the bridge itself, but before we get to that, let's take a minute and talk about Old Finch Avenue.
A lot of older roads take courses that meander or go down into a river valley and up the other side, because back in the day that was a practical solution in places where the geography didn't lend itself to a straight and level road. And looking at Old Finch on a map, it definitely meanders where it crosses the Rouge River, but there's something different about Old Finch. Usually we get an old whatever when we create a new route for the road that bypasses the wandering section. The new route then takes the street name, and if we keep the old street in place, it gets the word old tacked onto its name. On this map, I've marked Finch on both sides and Old Finch in the middle. There's a gap in Finch Avenue that's over 4 kilometers wide, and Old Finch only fills part of it. And there's no new Finch in there. I haven't found a solid history on how it came to be like this, but my guess is that on the west side of the map, where today's Finch Avenue curves to the north to meet Morningside Avenue, it probably originally continued straight instead, lining up with Old Finch, and then probably ended at the east end of today's Old Finch. I suspect that gap on the east side, which includes a creek and a railway line, was probably always a gap, and that the section to the east of that was called Finch because it's on the same alignment as the western section of Finch Avenue, even though it's discontinuous.
But I'm not really here to talk about Old Finch Avenue. I'm here to talk about this bridge. This is an interesting kind of bridge called a Bailey Bridge. It was invented by a British engineer named Donald Bailey during the Second World War. It's made of standardized prefabricated modules. The modules are small enough and light enough to be carried by army truck and assembled by soldiers without needing a crane. It does not require any specialized tools to assemble. Because it's modular, you can make it whatever size you want, just add more modules. And because they're standardized, even modules made in different factories fit together just fine. And the finished product is sturdy enough to carry a tank, which is important for a military bridge. During the war, Allied combat engineers installed thousands of these things, and after the war, Bailey was knighted for his invention. There are only a few Bailey bridges in Toronto. This one, for instance, carries a recreational trail over the GO Transit Richmond Hill line. There's another pedestrian Bailey Bridge over Lakeshore Boulevard near Ontario Place. There's also a pair of temporary Bailey bridges carrying Dufferin Street over the railroad corridor immediately north of the Gardiner Expressway, because the original bridge at that location was in such poor condition that not only could it not be in use anymore, it couldn't even feasibly be repaired. But as far as I know, this is the only permanent Bailey Bridge in Toronto carrying vehicular traffic. So why is this bridge even here? Well, in October 1954, Hurricane Hazel hit the Toronto area and washed out numerous bridges in Scarborough. I did a video on Hurricane Hazel, links in the usual places. The bridge that used to be here was one of them, and you can see what Hazel did to the bridge abutment behind me. Putting in Bailey bridges is a lot faster than putting in new permanent bridges. So Canadian military engineers were given the task of replacing the bridges as quickly as possible. 70 years later, this is the last one of those still standing. Not bad for a bridge that was constructed in only 3 days. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, you know what to do. Please like and subscribe.